What's going on? Welcome back to the vlog. It is Monday, and Monday I typically go ahead and I answer a couple questions from the internets, and doing it in my classroom this week. I thought, hey, talking classroom stuff, might as well be in the classroom. Anyway, let's get started right to the point, not messing around today. First one comes in from Kristen Herdon, and she says, "You're an awesome teacher," smiley face. That's not really a question. I just wanted to, that's moving on. So this comes from my video, A Week in the Life of a Teacher, my crazy week. And Michelle Gonzalez is asking about consequences. She said, "What's the consequence? Where I live, teachers are not allowed to take recess array or learning time. So what kind of consequence can we give?" Okay, let's talk about consequences. So my sort of school of thought on consequences and behavior and that sort of thing is the consequence, at least from when I'm coming from a perspective of a kindergarten teacher, so we're talking 5 and 6 year olds, but I think you can scale this up. The consequence has to be logical and it has to be immediate. So what I mean by that is if a student makes a mistake and needs a consequence during 8 o'clock in the morning, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to take away the recess for that thing. Try to explain to a 5 or 6 year old, hey, that thing you did 2 hours ago, yeah, you're not getting recess because you did it. That's not going to connect with most students. So I'll give you a couple of examples of consequences that I give. So step one, you gotta determine two things. One, what do they like? You can take it away. Or two, what do they not like? And you can give that to them. For example, I have a student who really hates being separated from the group. So timeouts are perfect for him. Now, it needs to be said, consequences can't be universal. For example, not all consequences will work for all students. For my one student, when his body or his voice, where he gets too silly or too excited, I'll have him go to timeout. I don't really call it timeout. I just go tell him to take a break, and I have a special spot that's just for him, because his spot is away from everyone else where no one can see him. Because if he goes to timeout, where everyone else can see him, he's going to draw attention towards himself. But if he goes in the spot that I have for him, if you can see, by the cubbies behind that, the mission boxes, he goes back there, and he's only there for like 30 seconds tops. What I'll say is, this is after giving him a warning and a reminder. I'll say, so you've made a choice to not follow my directions, and I'm going to need you to go calm down in your calm down spot. When you're ready to follow my directions, I'd love to have you back. And he's only there for a really short amount of time. So he'll go over there and he'll start to wander back, and I'll say, "Oh, glad to have you back. Are you ready to follow my directions?" And usually he'll say yes. If not, then I'll have him go back. And I would say 9 times out of 10, this consequence works for him. But that consequence does not work for everybody. Some students just cannot handle that type of consequence. So another thing is, I have a student who really likes to draw in his journal. So if he's not listening and not doing what I'm asking him to do, I'll say, okay, if you're not going to follow my directions, I'm going to take away your journal, and you're going to lose the privilege to write in your journal. And he usually shapes up after that. But it really just depends on what the behavior is. So if a student is touching people and talking to them in the hallway in line, consequence, up as high as you want to go, all right, come hold my hand. Usually kids will be sort of embarrassed. They don't want to do that. They don't want to hold the teacher's hand. They want to be in line. I really like to play up the fact that they're 5 and 6, so they want to be treated like big kids, right? So they don't want to be seen holding the teacher's hand in the hallway, especially if they pass another class. It's kind of embarrassing. So that's a consequence that makes sense, and it's logical. If you can't follow the hallway rules that keep us safe, then you now need to step out and hold my hand. Another thing is I try not to send kids to the back of the line, because then kids associate being in the last with being bad. And if you teach elementary, the whole line, I'm first, I'm last, that's a mess. So if a consequence, I try to steer clear of, hey, go to the end of the line, because then that's always associated with, ooh, the end of the line is bad, right? So I try not to do that. I'll have them step out of line. If they won't hold my hand, I'm obviously not going to make them, but they can step out and be in their own line by themselves, so that way they're not bothering or messing up anybody else. So the theme here, the common thread is, my consequences that I give need to be fair, consistent, immediate, and logical. So the only time I'll take away recess, and I never take away the whole recess, the only time I'll take away recess is if we're at recess and a student is misbehaving or not being safe. They'll have to sit in timeout for a little while. Or if we are like on the way to recess and the student is not listening, maybe I'll take away a minute of the recess. Or I'll have them have guided recess where they spend the recess with me outside, and I'll have them just kind of be by my side the whole time, and they might lose the privilege to pick who they want to play with. So it has to be logical in their head, otherwise they're just going to get angry at you. They're going to not understand why. Wait, I did something at breakfast and now you're taking away my recess? They're not going to understand it. So you got to get creative with it. Some schools might not allow timeouts, or every school is different. Every school has a different hierarchy and a different system. But you just really have to play with it, and you have to figure out your kids. There is no one blanket consequence system that works for everybody. But I don't want to make this all negative. Let's talk about rewards for a second. On the flip side, if you're going to have consistent students that always, no matter what, are just doing the right thing, it's really important that you reward and praise those students. Not too much, but enough that they know, hey, I acknowledge what you're doing and I appreciate it. And then, those students, they're probably, the teacher's pet kind of students, right? They're going to probably always do the right thing regardless of what you do, what system you have in place. But the students that you should really try to hook and get on your team are the fringe, the students that they could go either way on a given day, right? They could follow the students who are not doing it right, or they could do it right. If you have a student who sometimes acts up or acts out and they're doing it right, I just lose my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, good job. Wow, look at everybody, look how he's doing it, to try to build the confidence in that student. Our words as teachers have a lot of value, even when we think they're not listening, right? Like, nobody's listening to me right now. They're listening. And if you can continue, another thing to really consider is public praise versus private correction. So when you are doling out these corrections, try to make them private. Because when you privatize the consequences, it doesn't put the student on stage. Some students like to be on stage. You don't have to avoid the power struggle. You give them the consequence privately, and then the public praise. Because what happens is, if you praise your class publicly all the time, in the air, in the atmosphere, right? The culture, a culture of compliance. It starts to develop. Students just hear all the kids that are doing it right all the time, left and right. It helps the positivity of the classroom. It keeps up the morale of the class, and it keeps that positive momentum moving. So you're praising all the kids that are doing it right, and then you're privately correcting the students who are doing it wrong, and it doesn't take away from the positivity of the classroom environment. Now, obviously, there's times where you have to correct publicly. You got to call a kid out in the middle of class. It's just going to happen. And, some students can take it, and some students can't take it. You got to know which kids, if you call out in the middle of class, are going to have a meltdown. Obviously, don't call those kids out in the middle of class. I mean, just like many things, teaching is about knowing your students, how they react. Now, I've made some mistakes this year, big time. I made a mistake today. I had a student who, we were having snack time, and everybody gets a snack. You don't have to earn a snack. It's a right. Everyone gets a snack. But you earn the right to get a drink of water from the drinking fountain. It's after lunch. They've all had, and the only thing you got to do is you have to eat your snack quietly and watch the video. Today, we watched Super Y. We watched about 10 minutes of Super Y, or a different PBS show for our snack time. And my only rules are don't talk, just eat and watch the show. And so I call kids when they're following my directions to get a drink of water. My one student was talking the whole time. And not just like, oh, I like this show, or oh, this pizza sure is good. Like, he was like bothering people, like instigating people. And I talked to him like 4, 5, 6 times. Remember, we don't talk during snack. Remember, we don't talk during snack. So snack time was over. He's like, but I didn't get a drink. And I was like, you were talking the whole time. And he just completely blew up. Going back on it, what I should have done is I should have given him one more. Like, I should have said, okay, snack time's almost over. If you want that drink, make sure I see you not talking to neighbors. Or I could have separated him to a different table, and then he might have been quiet. I shouldn't have. If I'm being honest with myself, I kind of thought he might have had an episode if I didn't let him get a water. It's that constant battle that I have with, here are my rules, follow them. If you follow them, you get this. Versus, I know this kid's gonna blow up if I don't give him what he wants. So it's trying to figure out that balance of how, he can't get water if he doesn't follow my directions. But did I really do everything in my power to help him follow directions? Probably not. So that's reflecting on myself today. It's all about knowing your kids. So I made that mistake today. I'm not going to repeat it tomorrow. It's all about the learning process and reflecting on it. So, that's just kind of how I think about consequences. And, one quick thing. So as you may or may not know, I don't have a clip chart system or any public behavior system. What I do have is the book. Here's how the book works. The book essentially takes the place of the clip chart, your standard clip chart. What I don't like about the clip chart is that it's public, and students can see other students' behavior, and it becomes a competition, and some students can't handle publicly moving their clip up or down. So I have the book, and here's how it works. If a student is misbehaving, they get their name on the board. It's their warning. If they continue to misbehave, they get their name in the book. When their name goes in the book, that's some sort of task-oriented timeout, a consequence, like I just explained. If their name goes in the book a second time, then they need to be removed from the classroom, the office, principal's office. A third time in the book, you have to go to the office and phone call home. That's not going to happen very often, but it's being consistent with it that I need to work on. If a student gets their name on the board, but then fix their mistake, I will erase their name off the board. No harm done. Everybody makes mistakes. Same thing for the book. If you get your name in the book, it's once, but you fix it, gone. It's erased. Twice, you're in office. Yeah, we're not gonna. He didn't fix it. It essentially takes the place of the clip chart, but it keeps it private, so I can bring the book over to the student and say, okay, I'm writing your name in the book because, and then I'll exactly write the exact behavior. So that way later I can refer back to it and say, do you remember when you were touching your neighbors earlier? Well, I haven't seen you doing that. It looks like you fixed your mistake, so I'm going to cross your name off. Or you've continued to do that behavior, so now here's what's next. So it helps me, it reminds me of what the behavior was. So I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but it's something that I've been working on. My next steps is to be more consistent with it. And yeah, so that's my consequence thing. That's what I think about consequences and how I dole them out. And that's kind of my thoughts on that. So thanks for watching. Love you guys. Find your gift, share it with the world, and remember, you are worth it. See you tomorrow.